Recording. Okay, good. Welcome everyone to Connect and Create. I'm Corrina Sephora, and we have a wonderful guest here with us today. And we have some returning people in our audience, and we have everyone on Facebook that's having an opportunity to be a part of this conversation today. So thank you all for being here. And as we get started, I wanted to just share with you a little bit about how Connect and Create began, and then we'll introduce Cathy, and then away we'll go. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I found myself really with this sort of missing of getting out and being able to meet other artists and go to artist talks, and that part of my life was just not happening, as many of us. And so I looked to see what I could create, and I came up with this idea because I'd been interviewed on someone else's Zoom conversation, that it might be a nice place to connect with people. And so this show has been going for a year, and we are, what episode are we at? We are at episode
51, wasn't it? 51, 52?
52, yes, episode 52. So this has been happening for almost exactly a year, and I'm looking to determine how much longer I'll continue with Connect and Create. So, and here we are at episode 52. So I'd like to also give a big shout out to Fulton County Council for the Arts for the generous grant that I've received to run this show. And so thank you very much. And without further ado, I will introduce you to Cathy. Cathy, anything you'd like to say before I give your formal introduction?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Awesome. Wonderful. So let's see. Cathy is a contemporary artist and creates urban landscape paintings that reflect city life in all its glory. As an occupational therapist, Cathy used to help develop fine motor skills in children. And during a career break, she realized that the artist's dream remained, and it was now or never. She would regret it if she did not at least try. And that was in 2008. And since then, Cathy has tenaciously built her career and says that she has been learning on the job ever since. Her style has developed from an early, predominantly close circle-based abstracts into urban landscapes, fueled by a lifelong interest in buildings and rooted in a childhood dominated by the giant decaying cotton mills in the north of England. Cathy now exhibits around the UK, Europe, and is in collections as far afield as Canada, Africa, and New Zealand. Congratulations. And she lives in a chapel near Buckingham in the UK, right, which she converted with her husband. And it's close enough to London to get an urban architecture fix when needed. And when Cathy's not steering 60 foot of steel canal boat along waterways and wielding a windlass.
That's right.
All right, she can be found splattering paint and singing loudly in her Buckingham studio. Wonderful. I love all of those things. I'd love to see pictures of you. Are you going to show us pictures of your studio?
I might turn the camera around. I think I've got a few of me in progress and in progress shots, so you'll see a little bit of the studio. But
okay, that's great.
More of England.
And the boat too. I'm excited about this boat. All right.
Another time, perhaps.
Without further ado, Cathy, please, I'd love to hear from you, and please share with our audience.
Right. Hello. Thank you, Corrina, and welcome everybody. And I'm going to talk about my 4950 paintings challenge, which I did in 2018. And you can see some of them behind me here, but I'll go in more detail once I start sharing. So I've got a few slides to go through. So let me start the screen sharing. Let's hope this will work. So that's what I want to share. And there we go. So the 4950 paintings challenge, it's a bit of a mouthful. I tended to just call it the 4950 challenge, or 4950 paintings. So what was it? Let me just go. Sorry, my slide's not changing. Sorry, I am not. That's changing too slowly. Bear with me. There we go. Let's start again. Right, so what is it? Well, it started off when a friend of mine in 2017 did a 50 prints challenge, and it sounded like a really good idea, and I was mulling around with an idea of how I could convert that. But I had a few problems because normally the paintings I do are quite large, this type of thing, and they're quite intricate, quite detailed. So I wondered how I would do that. So I had several things I needed to think of. First of all, I knew I couldn't create something like that in the time I had, certainly not once a week, as well as doing the other paintings that I wanted to do. I then had the other issue with the detail is that when my work goes small, because the technique I use masking fluid and I paint it on. If I have too much detail, I have nowhere left for the paint to actually stick to. So doing a full building, complicated buildings were out. So I came up with the idea then of doing the architectural details. Why 4950? Well, I was playing around with ideas for size and I was sort of thinking how I could make it a nice catchy little phrase. And I suddenly thought, well, 7 by 7 is 49 if you work in inches, and that's a nice small size that you can actually work on and do something with without being too tiny that you just sort of need a microscope to look at it. So I came up with this idea. What else? I wanted them to be local because I kept having people asking me. I tended to do London and Manchester. I'm originally from Manchester in the UK, and London's quite a popular venue. So I thought, well, I'll do something local, and doing them small again makes them easier for people to buy because it made them cheaper, and it just gave me a different range. So there were lots of reasons for doing the small ones. Plus I wanted the challenge of actually doing a whole body of work, and 50 seemed like a lot of paintings to do, quite a challenge, and I knew it would be a hard thing to take on, and I would certainly grow from doing it. So those are the reasons behind it. And I'll go on. So I ended up with a list. Now, that was the first thing I did, was figure out what I was going to paint. You won't be able to read these very well, but I've basically listed all the architectural details I could think of. I did do a Google search to try and find more. Now, as I went through, I needed to jumble them up because I didn't want to do like 3 weeks of just doing windows. I wanted to mix them up so there's more interest to them. And also I wanted to be sure that I could get some interest in things. So I didn't want to use the same building more than once. I've found from previous challenges, if you do an area without any plan beforehand, you end up with doing the same building 5 times, and then you suddenly realize you've run out of paintings to do in your series. So that seemed to make sense to only do each building once. Some details I did use twice, but I tried to make sure there were different things. So these two are both walls, but one's a stone wall and one's a brick wall. And again, with windows, we used a few times. So I had an arch window that was a stone window, and this one was made of metal. So these are the archy bits here are actually wood inside a stone frame. So I was just trying to mix things up to make it as interesting and varied as possible. So those are my rules. I have my 7 by 7 or 49 square inches, hence the 4950 paintings challenge title. Architectural details. Buckingham and local area. I felt I wanted to expand it a little bit because Buckingham's quite a small town, so I thought I might have trouble finding too many. Buildings only used once, and details according to my list. And then I told everybody I was doing it to make sure I actually got around to doing it, because that's the other thing. If you don't announce your intention, sometimes you forget about it and it doesn't get done. So that's where I was. And then I started, first thing I did was go out and take photographs. And the first day I chose was really grey and miserable. And to begin with, what I was doing was snapping everything. I had a vague idea of the list, 50 items. Keeping that in your head isn't so easy. So I tended to, initially I was going around and just thinking, right, well, I knew I needed a clock. I knew I needed several windows. So I was taking lots of photographs. And this is the type of thing. This is the first one, which is called Marking Time. So that was my reference image, and it's quite grey because it was such a poor day. Plus that clock, I didn't have a zoom lens. That was when I realized I needed a zoom lens on my camera to actually get in closer. So this is a resulting painting, which is the first one, which was what I started using for the advertising. The other thing I was doing the whole time with this was that I was blogging about it. So I was sharing the painting in, this is the painting I'm going to do, and this is the painting in progress, and talking about it on my website, so people would hopefully to generate interest in the challenge. Here's another one, an early one, and sometimes I did find the paintings were much nicer than the original subject, but I needed to do a drain, and I managed to find this one that was on a slightly off angle, which I made it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to slow down because I'm talking too fast. So that's another one. Sometimes I had too much choice. So this is the drain pipe one, and there are lots of drain pipes everywhere. So that was another one I had. There were several others, but it got to the point where I thought I can't take all the photographs because I don't. 50 sounds a lot, but once you actually start looking into it, there's a lot you can't do. And sometimes some of the decisions were really hard because I'd find 4 or 5 that were really lovely, and I wanted to do all of them, but then I wouldn't be working within the guidelines of the challenge of doing the 50 different ones. So and I'll just show you, these are some of my rejects. So you can see I had quite a lot of interesting stuff there that I could have worked with, but the crenellations on the old jail here was because I needed that, and I'll come to why I didn't use the jail earlier. But I just found all these fabulous things, and it was really nice to go out with the camera and look, because you actually start seeing the details in an area that you live in that you maybe wouldn't notice the rest of the time. So these two, some details were hard to find. This one, I had a stained glass window as one of my options, but I found that the stained glass windows are not that impressive to see when you're photographing them from outside looking in. And one of the things I was quite keen on doing was an unwritten rule, was that I wanted people to be able to find these easily. So as much as possible, I wanted everything to be outside. Now I say as much as possible because the next one, the bolt here, I had trouble with that one because most bolts on buildings are on the inside. So trying to find a bolt on a building that was outside around Buckingham was proving quite difficult. And I found this one is in the old jail. So I knew people could at least then go in and have a look at it, which is behind the main door. So so that's that one. Right, let's go to the next one. I seem to have all these things at the bottom I would like to get rid of. You can't see all the slides. Okay. So the next thing is I kept the time quite well to begin with, but as the year goes on and exhibitions cropped up and this, that, and the other, I was finding I was getting behind. So I got to the point where I was far behind. And so I then started working far more in batches. So this is what towards the end when I found that actually I didn't have enough time to do everything. So these were, I had about 20 left to do by the end of November, which was an awful lot. So lots of these got done in December, hence the Christmas lights and everything else. So where are we? Now, part of this process in 2018, I started doing meditations on my paintings. And I thought when I was thinking of how to do the exhibition at the end, that actually it would be quite nice to have the meditations with them, because it was a way of connecting with people, connecting people with the art and talking about what thought processes went through my mind, why I chose certain things over others. And so I started doing that. And some of them would be a pure descriptive. So this one on Juliet Balcony here is very much a thought process. Whereas Cottage Latch, I started thinking about what would be behind that door, what would, if you opened that door and went into that building, what would you find? And so I went on a whole trail around possible scenarios that might be behind that door. Okay, so where are we going? So I managed to get it done. And this painting here is, I did it, it was literally to the wire. 31st of December, this painting was taken when I'd finished the 50th painting, and I lined them all up like that and stood on my stairs and looked down and took a photograph. So that's the photograph of the finished painting. And there was always a plan with the 4950 challenge was to do an exhibition afterwards. So I booked a place called the Chantry Chapel. Now, the reason I use the Chantry Chapel, which is a bit of a mouthful to say when you're trying to say it like this, is it's the oldest building in Buckingham, and it's quite small, which fitted with the sort of, these paintings are quite small, and you can see they don't take up all that much room. Although there's 50 paintings, that's there's 13 boards there, so you can get the idea. So I need to figure out what that is in meters, so that's what, probably about 4 meters that way, so not a lot of space to actually have them on display. This is the chapel itself, because I thought you might like to see that. I just love the old details. Next thing I discovered with framing 50 paintings is you need a production line, and I ended up bulk buying, because 50 frames, 50 mounts, and so this is the production line in progress. That's my boxes of paintings. And while I was framing them, I was wrapping them up ready to go to the exhibition, because the exhibition I needed to be ready. I had a short time frame. I had to be in there at 9 o'clock, and the first visitors were expected at 11. So there wasn't a lot of time to actually set everything up. The easy thing was that everything was going to be in order. So I didn't have to worry which painting was going to go where. It was a case of making sure they were in all order and just putting them up. Whereas another exhibition, I might be moving paintings around, just trying to decide how it would look, but that wasn't an issue in this case. I needed to get boards, because it was with it being a historic building, I wasn't allowed to put anything in the walls. It all had to be freestanding. This is my packed up paintings here, and I discovered that a quarter of the paintings fit very nicely in an IKEA bag. So I had 4 of those, which meant it much easier than carting boxes of paintings. And I managed to get some advertising, a feature in one of the local magazines. This is Buckinghamshire Life magazine, which is a local magazine. And I've put some notes there, is that the things I really found is that because of the time constraint, I needed to be as prepared as possible beforehand. I had the installation planned, and I made sure everything I could carry, because I knew I'd have to carry it from where I could park the car to where I could actually set it up. And this is the installation day. There's me putting everything up and my banner outside. And just more about the actual exhibition. And I got lots of help setting up, and I was prepared beforehand. And it was only a weekend, so I set up on the Friday and it finished on the Sunday, and it was very well received. I've sold about a quarter of them now, so no, a third of them now. So sales are going quite nicely with those. And the next few slides are just looking at the painting. So I'm quite happy to answer people's questions now, because there isn't a lot else I can say about the exhibition. I've got a few pointers at the end, but we can finish through those. So I'll just scroll through these. So if anybody wants to ask anything about any of them, I thought you'd like to see them all.
What's your medium?
I use watercolor and acrylic ink, and then I use a masking technique, which is how I get the white lines, which is what I was saying about I couldn't go into too much detail without losing some of the movement of the paint, which is half the character of watercolor, really.
The masking technique that you mentioned really brings out like an emphasis, and kind of brings it into another realm, aside from, oh, okay, we've seen this watercolor painting of a, location before, to something very much more kind of graphic, and I'd say it has a little bit more of a contemporary flair to it.
I think so, and I like the fact that because I've got that structure before I start, it gives me the freedom to really explore the watercolor and the acrylic ink as much as possible. So I know that I'm going to have a structure there, however wild I go around it, which I think brings the two balance themselves out. I started thinking when I first started doing it, so like order and chaos. So you've got your order of your masking fluid and your chaos of your paint, and it seems to work quite nicely together.
Do you mind sharing what you use for your masking fluid?
I use Winsor & Newton's. I've tried various other ones, but I honestly find that is the best one for me. And I use something called the ruling pen, which I have got somewhere here, which I can look and find in a minute. But I don't really want to go wandering off, otherwise you'll be looking at blank screen. But do you know what a ruling pen is? It's basically two bits of metal that go together and then fit two ticks.
I love your subjects. I'm an urban planner, and I look at this stuff all the time, and I think, does anyone else, you know, love this stuff as much as I do? And now I know.
Hey, they do. So that, if I can get that to the, can you see that? So that's a ruling pen, and I use it like a dip pen. So I just dip it in and draw with it.
Great.
And I don't use anything else. I don't need anything else, because if you want to do a large area, you just use it sideways on and it works. And I don't have ruined brushes at the end of it, which I know a lot of artists find problem with using masking fluid.
Great.
So
you shared a little bit about your working really large in the very beginning, and then
yes,
chose to do this project where you made, say again the quantity of it was 50.
50, yes.
What, great. And so how do you feel about creating the pieces that are the smaller in this, series, or what did you get out of this process of making all of these, they're far beyond sketches, they're paintings, but on this kind of smaller format? What's the process like for you, or the experience of creating the smaller pieces versus the much more large, intricate pieces?
A lot of them tended to be more compact in terms of creating them. So when I'm working on the bigger ones, it takes me days to actually get to a point where I'm at the painting, whereas the preparation for some of these I could do within a couple of hours and then be on to the painting quite quickly, just because they were so much smaller. And it forced me to think, because they were all square. There were some things like there's a steeple there, you can see the steeple there, and that is, how do you put something that's long and thin in a square space? So it really challenged me in terms of composition, figuring out how to fit them in, how to find interest in something, particularly with some of them being very mundane, like the drain pipes, how to make the drain pipe look exciting, and pipe work. I thought, there's loads of pipe work in the building, so we need to put that in. So that's this one here. I don't even see my cursor, the top right. So I found that at the back in an alleyway at the back, and there was all these. They've added, these are all most of Buckingham's like Georgian era, so it's sort of like 1800s, and they put bits in, and they just, I need to put a pipe in there, and I need to fit it into this other pipe. So it really is very, what we call Heath Robinson, I think you call it Rube Goldberg, isn't it? Where you're putting things together in such a bizarre way, because that's the only way you can fit them together. So I quite like these quirky things that you find with buildings, and it gave me a chance to really look at those. Whereas if you're looking at a grand, impressive building, you're looking at the scale, the impression it's giving, whereas some of these things are really quite intimate. I mean, taps, they tap. If I go back, I've got to think about the tap there somewhere. So the tap, I found that is a cheap, scrappy brass tap that is in the corner of the most beautiful courtyard you can imagine at a stately home in Buckinghamshire. And it just, it like that, it fits there, but if you look at it, it's nothing special to look at. I have got it. I don't think I have got the original photograph here, and you'll see how tatty it is. But again, whether that will show very well. Unfortunately, I should.
A bit of a glare.
It's a bit of a glare, yes, unfortunately. But if you can imagine that's I mean, you can look it up on my website, or I can try and find it in a minute. But it was just that contrast between this splendid environment and this functional little bit of normality, which I really appealed to me about that tap.
Mm. I quite like the sky in this one with it looks like a lamp coming out
Yeah,
of the
this
side
is,
of a
yeah.
building. Now, is that some kind of just experimental, like wet paper with dropping ink into it, or how are you getting?
It's wet on wet, and I use a lot of salt in my process.
Oh,
So
great.
that's why I like to have space, because if you try and do something that's very heavily masked, what you find is the salt doesn't do any work, because the masking interferes, or you lose it when you pull the masking off. So that, because it was a nice open area with no masking in, the salt was able to do some work.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, I love your sort of like aspects of precision and creating, what you see through the lens of the camera, but bringing your own style to it. This is very, very unique. But I would like to go back to one thing also, which is how you choose the angles, and the details as your subject matter in the photography. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it really varies, because I've always liked to. I can remember when I had children, somebody said to me, if you want to decorate a child's room, you need to get down to a child's level.
Mm.
And it's something that's always struck me. And looking at photography, you often see these photographs where people are looking up. So angle is very important to me, and I like to try and get some depth in. It was a lot more difficult with these because they were such small subject matters, and I was often focused on like one detail, because that was the whole theory behind it. So whereas normally I do a large picture and I'd have railings in the foreground and a big building in the background, say, or something like that, here I didn't have necessarily that scope to do it, depending on what the architectural detail was. So some architectural details it was really easy, but others there wasn't that scope. So it was really a challenge in terms of how I actually then do take the photograph. And so sometimes I went back because I wasn't happy. I did one of a light and the trees were behind it, but I liked the way, because it was in January, so there were no leaves on the trees. So the tree behind was all, you could see all the twisting branches, and that I like the contrast between the curved twisting branches and this very linear street light, which you'll have seen. Let me go back, see if I can find it. I've got it in here somewhere. There it is. So you see, you can just about see, unfortunately. Let me just move that up a bit, and then you can actually see it. So yeah, that's probably really what went behind me choosing that.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, let's questions. Anything that you'd like to
yeah. I'll just let me finish off with some takeaways, and then if you've got any more questions.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a walkthrough video, but I don't know that we've got enough time to watch that.
Okay, good enough. Sorry, I thought you were wrapping up. No worries.
No, I've got a walkthrough video. Actually, I could do. It's got no sound to it, and it's a bit. My video techniques improved, but let me go through the video, see if it will play, and then I can hopefully talk through, so you get the idea of the actual exhibition and how it was. Now click that once. Do I have to click it again? Oh, it's thinking.
There you go. And you got the sound connected.
Good. Well, there's no sound on the video. It's just a quiet walkthrough. There we go. We're going to
YouTube.
YouTube, I think. Where are you, video? There we go.
Perfect.
Oh, I have got to speak.
Cathy, could you share with us how you price your pieces?
At the moment, it's worked on how long I reckon they're going to take, and then I work by square inches. So I've worked out a price per square inch, and that's how I work it at the moment. And then I allow extra for framing.
Okay, thank you.
So there is some sound on here, and it's distracting me a little bit. So I don't know if you want to carry on with that. You want me to stop that and go back to my what we're doing for time? I think we're okay at the moment.
We're doing great. We have 15 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. I can mute that actually. It might be useful because I don't really think I really want that sound. I'd rather people just had a look. So let me just mute the sound there, because I'm very conscious that I've done a lot more videos since then, and I think I'm a lot calmer about talking about things. So
we couldn't hear any. We couldn't hear anything, Cathy.
Oh, there was sound, but it was really quiet. And
Oh, right.
Mumbling. So that's why I thought it was distracting me. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, that's all right.
So this is going round. So you'll see some of these pictures. I've shown you them as stills, and I mixed it in with some stills because I just thought it would make it. So you can see the building there and how just coming around the end. And it was a beautiful space to work in.
I think you did it. Didn't you do a town trail with your pictures, Cathy?
I did afterwards, yes.
Yeah.
I did, because lots of people are asking me where they were, and I started sharing them. There's a local Facebook group, and I started sharing them with Facebook group without telling people where they were, and then letting people guess, and then I'd let them know the next day or something like that. And that I have found that's been the best thing about these paintings now I've done them, is that people really engage with them because they're small and they like the fact they can look for these details and they know they're somewhere in Buckingham, or some of them are outside in some of the villages, but I did a trail with the ones that I knew were in Buckingham so that people would be able to find them on foot, and that was quite popular. And I've had a lot of good feedback from that one.
I think you should launch that again while we're still partially locked down, because that was really good.
Yeah, thank you. I think at some point the idea is to put a book together and then people can use the booklet. So I was just sorting out, because that's the thing, you need pictures with you to really find them, and then you see the building a bit more. And
then they can be in the jail and in the town jail, can't they?
Yeah.
The Americans might wonder what we're talking about when we say in the jail.
True.
It's you saw a picture. There's a picture of it earlier on, the old jail in Buckingham. It's a landmark. It's probably the image. The Chantry Chapel is tucked away in a corner. It's a little gem that's tucked away in a corner. But the jail's probably if people, it's like if you think of London, you think of Big Ben. Buckingham is the jail. So that's the video. And then if I go, oh, now I'm on YouTube. Let me just figure out how to get out of YouTube. Bear with me a second. There we go. That's my next slide. So the takeaways I'd have say from doing this was, if you want to do a challenge like this, is have a plan first. Think about what you want to do. But having said that, don't be afraid to be flexible, because there was some, like, I did them in the wrong order, and then I suddenly realized I couldn't find my stained glass window, so it ended up being a stained glass sky. However frustrated you get, keep going. Don't be afraid to burn the candle at both ends to get the job finished, because if you're giving yourself a deadline, it really feels good to get it finished on time, even if it is all last minute. And do share what you're doing. People were fascinated by the project, the process. Every time I saw people, I did various demonstrations out and about, and I found people were saying, oh, I've heard you talk about this. How's it going? And what building are you doing next? Have you decided what you're going to do for this one? Because I posted a list, that list you saw at the beginning. I posted that on my website so people could see. And at one point I was asking for suggestions. So there were lots of spin-offs from it that were really quite positive in terms of just engaging with people and interacting people.
Wonderful.
So that's more or less it for my talk. So and thank you for being here. There's a link there if you want to see all the paintings in one place on my website, or if you just go to cathyreadart.com and you look in the paintings, there is a link to the 4950 paintings there if you want to see them all. So any more questions?
And does it say on the website which ones are still for sale?
In the shop, the ones that are available, they're
Lovely.
still there.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm going to cough.
Wonderful. I put the link. Did I put that link correct in the chat, Cathy?
Hang on, I've not looked at the chat. I'm going to stop sharing now, and then
Okay,
that's
good.
a bit. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing. No, that's saying share. How do I stop share?
It's at the top.
Oh, there it is. I've done this before, but for some reason now I'm talking, it was all over the place.
It's okay.
That's better.
It's wonderful.
I couldn't see chat in the share. That's why I started saying, let me just check that link. I don't see the link.
It's in the chat in the very bottom. The little chat box.
Chat box. Well, I've got chat open. I can't see it, but there we go. That doesn't mean to say it's not there.
I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's the one.
Good.
So if you click on there and click on this like a shopping with the drop down to portfolio, and then you'll find the 4950 paintings on the portfolio.
Yeah.
There's a few places to get to it.
Yeah. I love the one of the signposts, but that's just because, you know, I love Buckingham, and so
I love that signpost.
Yeah.
I had to do that signpost. It was one, and I managed to get some interesting things on it. And that was the other thing. I like to put words and details in. So if there were words that were appropriate, I try and include them.
Wonderful. I was in Hawaii a few months ago, and there's a signpost similar, but I'm sure it says very different things in Maui.
Oh, yes. There's one. Was it the North Pole or the South Pole? There's one for the different countries. There's a massive one with like 50 arms or 100 arms on them, whatever it is, and you know, France this way, Germany that way, USA that way, and
right. Wonderful, like very specific and vague all at the same time, right?
Absolutely. Well, you've got to be vague.
Quite vague.
Quite vague, yes.
Wonderful. Well, do we have any other questions from anyone here in the audience, or comments? Something that you've gathered out of this conversation, something you'd like to engage with Cathy with in our last bit of the conversation today?
In the exhibition, I really enjoyed the fact that Cathy had done meditation kind of things, or a bit about her thought process to each picture. It really, to me, just added a whole other aspect to the paintings themselves, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
It's funny. It's one of those things I've only recently started doing, but I heartily recommend it to any artist, is that you sit with your painting for 10 minutes, because they do speak to you, and you often remember things when you're looking at the painting that you maybe were thinking when you were creating it, but then because you've moved on from then, you've forgotten about it. And when you sit there and actually look at it, then you think, oh yes, I remembered, I was thinking that when that was doing that bit, and that often sparks off again more dialogue, because paintings, I think, you create the painting and then it takes on a life of its own, because every person who comes and looks at it sees it and finds something different in it, and relates to it in different ways, because they're bringing their own experiences.
Wonderful, lovely.
And that's, I like that connection. It's sort of it's lovely.
Wonderful. Well, let's see, we have a few minutes left. Anyone else here have any comments or questions for Cathy? This is great, Cathy. Thanks for sharing. We've got a couple comments in the chat. Am I pronouncing this right? Satnam?
Thank you. Satnam.
Satnam, yeah. This is great, Cathy. Thanks for sharing. I'm currently in transit, so cannot talk. Okay, wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us, Satnam.
And then Betsy
Drive
has,
safely.
yes, definitely, right? Betsy's had a couple of comments, thank you. I'm so inspired by your work. And she's now following you on Facebook. So there we
Thank
go.
you, Betsy.
Betsy's one of our regulars. You come every week, Betsy.
Where is everybody from? I hear.
I'm from Atlanta, and
All right.
I'm the urban planner who just I just love that you are paying attention to things like this that I do, and maybe I should talk more about those silly little things that I'm paying attention to.
Yeah, do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you, Corrina?
I'm also in Atlanta.
All right.
Yep. And I'd love to, since you like this architecture, I actually, in America, we have a lot of like very new buildings, but my studio is situated in an old cotton mill where they built cotton mills. And so it's a lot of architecture from the 1800s, which for America is kind of old.
Sheila and I are both Manchester girls, so we're
from
very
Manchester.
familiar with cotton architecture.
Yeah,
the cotton capital of the world, wasn't it, Manchester?
It was at one point.
Uh-huh.
We used to call it Cottonopolis.
Cottonopolis, that's right. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, let's see. You might be familiar with some of the architecture from where my studio is, from the what was that movie with Mockingjay? What is that movie? Can't remember. Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, yes.
Hunger Games. Most of it was all filmed here. So any little brick walkway that you see, or the funniest thing, I don't know, it was a little bit freaky actually. One day I showed up to my studio to come in, I think it was on Saturday, and there was the parking lot was filled with all these peasants, painted, in like dingy, kind of rags, dressed in dingy type of rags. There were all these extras, or like hundreds of them. And they were very ghostly, like, because they were going to be in the film, right? You're like all the extras. So anyway, well,
interesting.
Yeah. So, Cathy, I have a question for you. In the very beginning, you showed that beautiful, magnificent kind of large painting, and then talked about getting into your challenge of making all of these and having that choice to work small for a while. What would you say would be the biggest contrast for you in like the process, or even like once the painting is finished, standing back and looking at that big painting versus your, large collection of small pieces?
First of all, space, being able to stand far enough back from it. They do take a long time, and because they take a long time, the process can be extenuated, because when you're working with masking fluid, you want to try and remove it as quickly as possible after the painting's dried. But when you're doing a large, complicated piece, it takes you a while to build up all the layers and fill in all the details. And sometimes the masking fluid does not want to come off by the time you're finished, so it's a lot slower to actually work through that. Differences between the two, they're a lot more, the small ones are much more portable, so they were really good when I was going out doing demonstrations, and I do tend to demonstrate when I'm doing like open studios and art fairs and things like that. I find it's a really good way to show people how I work. But I like working large, because the large paintings, you've got more space for the paint to interact. So I'll have lights. I love it when I get a large area with nothing going on, because then the inks and the paints merge together and I get some fascinating effects that you can't achieve with the lines there, because they stop the paint from moving around.
Yeah, that one that you showed in the beginning was fabulous. I love the angles, and that's something I'm really struck by with pretty much all of your work. Your choice of the angles and the direction, and even how you would crop an image, in terms of your subject matter, I find very intriguing, and really, I would say, sets you aside from many other landscape painters that I've seen, or architectural painters that I've seen. So wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Let's see, Cathy, we have just a few moments left. Anything that you'd like to leave your audience around the world with today?
Well, I think do try a challenge like this, because I mean I think I will do it again. So if you are painting, if you are creating something, it's worth doing a challenge because you learn so much from it. And there's that old story, isn't there, where I think there's an art teacher gives his students, half his students have to complete a painting, just one painting to get their grade, and the other half have to do as many as possible. And the ones who are only doing one painting spend hours trying to figure out what the perfect thing is, whereas the ones who are being graded on quantity just churn them out and they learn by the process. So doing a challenge, even if the beginning you don't do very well, by the end you'll have something amazing because you'll have gone through that process. And you learn and grow so much from that. So I think that's probably why I would share.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm very familiar with that process of many, or just one in building really large pieces and then some smaller ones.
Yeah,
so
you get stuck with them.
What'd you say?
I say you can get stuck if you're just doing more.
This is true. This is true. Yeah. At an artist residency one time, I gave myself the challenge of one small drawing and one, drawing, painting each day and one small sculpture each day. And did that for 2 weeks. And then out of that, created an installation that was many pieces, and I've made different iterations of that installation ever since then. So it was a really powerful process. So thank you for reminding me of that as well.
You're welcome.
Yes. All right. Well, until next week, thank you all for joining us, and Cathy and all of your friends, Katie and Sheila, and I believe Satnam. Thank you for joining us from other parts of the world. And Betsy, thank you for coming back every single week. And everyone that's on our Facebook audience, thank you so much for being here.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.